Hey guys, it's Katie here, and for this edition of NASCAR Pit Stop, it's going to be strictly online. So, I took to Twitter yesterday and asked you for your questions. That's right, you could ask me anything racing related, whether it's my opinion or, well, anything. So, I have a list here, and let's get to it. Liam asks, honest opinion on the racing we saw on Sunday. Well, it was quite boring, I guess, is what you would call it. The long, straight, follow the leader line is not what fans want to see, and frankly, it's not what I want to see. The new cars, I think, played a big part in that. I think a lot of the drivers weren't exactly sure how far the cars could go as far as pack racing or side-by-side, and there really only seemed to be one line. The outside line seemed to be the only line that was moving quickly. The bottom line, I mean, you could get a run on someone, but then you drop back. And I think we saw that a lot, especially at the very, very end with Dale Earnhardt Jr. He jumped out of line a little too soon, got that run on Jimmy Johnson, but just could not make the pass for first place. And that's just because the bottom line just wasn't there all day long. And we saw, 2-3 wide at times, but a lot of times it was just one long straight line. And, I mean, it's not the greatest racing in the world, but I think with this new car, there's going to be some changes in the aero package when we come to Talladega and when we come back to Daytona. So, I think the racing will change as far as the season goes, once we get farther along in the season, but Daytona was quite boring. I really, really enjoyed the nationwide race and the truck race, despite the last crash in the nationwide race. That was pretty devastating, but the racing was there, the excitement was there, and that's what I'd like to see back in the Cup cars. So we'll just have to wait and see what Talladega brings us. Adam asks, which type of car do you think provided the best racing? The old car, the car of tomorrow, or the new Gen 6? Well, Adam, I'm a newer race fan. I came in when the car of tomorrow was being raced, and now the Gen 6. I really never got to see the old car on track. So, I took to YouTube and watched a few of the older races. I watched a couple of clips from Phoenix and from Martinsville and from Talladega and Daytona, and it seemed like the old car had a lot more that you could do with it, I guess is what I could see it. It looked really cool. The Gen 6 car definitely looks the best out on the track. I love the look of the new Gen 6 car. The car of tomorrow it was just boring. It was a sticker package that was all that defined the, different models, the Chevy or the Toyota or the Dodge or the Ford. But I think the best racing was definitely with the old car. Now, can't really judge the Gen 6 car just off of Daytona. That track is a track in itself. I think once we get to Phoenix and Vegas and Bristol and Martinsville and Darlington and all of these tracks, then I think it would be fair to make an assessment on which car had better racing, which car was better with the drivers, which ones did the drivers seem to like more. But as far as making a guess or which one has the best racing now, I think that's an unfair for the Gen 6 car. Let's give it a few more weekends and we'll come back to this question. Jim asked me, do you think the drivers played it safe during the 500 due to the Nationwide Series wreck? I don't believe the drivers played it safe because of the wreck on Saturday. I do believe it was hanging in their minds. I mean, how could it not? There were, dozens of people injured that day. So I do believe it was hanging on their minds, but I don't think they played it safe as far as, maybe they were scared to wreck again or scared to hurt the fans. I think they raced the best of their abilities with what they had out of the cars. I mean, the brand new Gen 6 cars, we had no idea how they would react on the track or in the draft or even tandem drafting, if that was even possible. I mean, we know it's not possible with like, a Ford and a Chevy. We saw that during spring testing. But, I mean, what about like a Ford to Ford or a Toyota and a Toyota? We didn't know that. So I think the drivers played it safe in that aspect as to they weren't entirely sure how far they could push the car, how far that limit was. But I think that will change once we come back to these tracks. Adam asked me again, the truck race at Daytona was 250 miles and had amazing racing. Do you think some cup races could be shortened to 250, 300 miles? Yes. I do believe that some of these really, really long tracks, or really, really long races at these tracks, especially at the tracks that have 2 races a season, could be shortened. Will it happen? Probably not. Like, they're never going to shorten the Daytona 500 or the Coca-Cola 600. Those are always going to be extremely long races. But I do believe if we shortened it, yeah, there's not going to be as long of a race, but I don't really think it's going to change the outcome of the race, because the drivers are still going to fight hard those last, 30 or 40 laps before the end of the race. So I don't think shortening the races will necessarily do anything to better the racing or bring excitement back into it. I think the races are where they're going to be and where they're going to stay as far as lengthwise. And, I don't know, I think the drivers are even getting kind of tired of the really long ones, especially in the summer. That gets really, really hot out in those cars. That would be unbearable in the heat. Riley, this is a good question. Riley asked me, do you have a crush on any driver? If so, who is it? Have you seen Kasey Kahne? His eyes are gorgeous. Trevor Bayne as well. I mean, he's around my age. I know he's taken, and I think he's either getting married or just got married, but those would have to be the two that I really have my eyes on. I was wearing my Kasey Kahne shirt yesterday. It's kind of sad that his face is on my back, so I can't see it. I just have a picture of his car on the front of my shirt, and his face is in the back, so that's a little disappointing. But, it's nice to the person sitting behind me in class, right? I mean, they get to stare at it all the time. I hope you enjoyed that answer. Team Honey Badger asked me, what was 4-time IndyCar champion Dario Franchitti's best finish in his 10 NASCAR Sprint Cup starts in 2008? I did not know the answer to this one when this was asked. So, I did my research. Dario, his best start was actually 7th in New Hampshire in 2008, but his best finish was only 22nd. He only led 1 lap, and that was at Auto Club Speedway, and he had 2 DNFs. So, I mean, most of his finishes were in the 30s, mid-30s, 33rd and 32nd place. If you go to Joey Logano, when he came up to the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series, he had 2, in his first 10 races that he was scheduled to race in, he had 2 that he did not qualify in, and his best finish was 13th. Otherwise, he was like 32nd and 39th and 38th and 43rd. He had 1 13th place and 1 26th. The rest were under 30. Now, if we go to Danica Patrick last year, in her very first 10 Cup starts, she finished 17th. That was her best finish. Her worst finish was 38th. But if you look at hers, she gradually gets better. And then in Daytona this last weekend, she finished 8th in the race. Started from the pole and finished 8th. So, if we compare that to Dario, he is definitely one of the best IndyCar racers in the series today. And if you look at how he struggled in NASCAR, but how well Danica is starting to adapt to NASCAR, I think she's going to do very, very well in this series. And who knows, maybe Dario can come back and give it another shot. Don't think that will happen, but who knows? So, Dario's best finish was 22nd. There's your answer. Liam asks, do you think NASCAR will make any changes to the aero package before the next plate race? Yes, I do believe they're going to make a change to the aero package. I'm not entirely sure what they would change or how much they would change it, but since this car, the Gen 6 car, is brand new, and NASCAR, I'm sure NASCAR collected data from almost every team as far as Toyotas, Fords, and Chevys to see what could be changed, what can be better, and I'm sure they watched the race and they're going to continue watching Daytona to see what they can improve on when the cars hit the track at Talladega and then back at Daytona in the fall. So they will change something on the aero package. It would surprise me if they didn't. But I'm not entirely sure what they would change. We'll have to wait and see. Ryan asks me, what was your favorite paint scheme in Daytona? I loved Michael Waltrip's tribute to the Sandy Hook victims. I thought that was an amazing thing that they did, to donate that money and then to get NASCAR involved and the fans, because the fans are so supportive of anything their driver supports. So for Michael Waltrip and his fan base and his team to support the Sandy Hook Elementary School Foundation, to support that tragedy and help that community, that was amazing. I love to see him running up there. I love to see him even, leading a few laps. That was really cool to see. But I think my favorite paint scheme that we're going to see throughout the season was Kevin Harvick in the Budweiser 29. I love how they brought back the old colors, the red and the white and the old paint scheme that they ran when they first came into NASCAR. I think that looks really, really cool out on the track. It's kind of sad to see him come out of the race so early, but I mean, he won the Sprint Unlimited and he won the Duel, so had some good times out there on the track. NASCAR Gyro Cam says, what is your favorite camera? That's a loaded question, no doubt. Definitely a loaded question. But I do love the new gyro cams in the car. I love to see, that was so cool to see the banking, the type of banking that Daytona has on, the corners and on the front stretch. I thought on the tri-oval, that was really, really cool to see how steep that banking really is. And I think it's going to be really neat to see it at Kansas or at Bristol or at some of these flatter tracks, just to see what is going on in the car, what the driver sees. That was really, really cool. I also like the in-car cameras to see how the driver reacts to a crash or to someone bumping him or her. I think that's really cool to see. But the camera that they had hanging over the track at Daytona, that was a really, really cool view to see on TV. That almost made the cars look animated, like it was kind of part of a video game. So I think that was really, really awesome. It'd be cool to see that on some other tracks, but definitely Gyrocam is my new favorite. I hope they put those in more cars and they use them much more often. Alex asked me, what do you think of the racing at Daytona, and do you miss tandem drafting? Well, I talked a little bit about Daytona already and how it was quite boring, running long green flag runs with long, follow the leader lines. That's a mouthful. Long follow the leader lines. But as far as tandem racing, that's done with in the Cup cars. That's not coming back unless we change the car again. It's kind of nice to still see that in the Nationwide Series, because those cars are still the same as what they've had for the last few years. But I don't miss it in the Cup Series. I think the Cup guys are a little more aggressive without the tandem drafting. And I think once NASCAR changes the aero package and maybe changes the cars a bit for Talladega and Daytona again, we're going to see more excitement in the racing and in the packs. And we're going to see more, 2 and 3 wide and battling for the lead. So I don't necessarily miss the tandem racing in the Cup Series, but I do like how we still have it in the Nationwide Series. Riley asks, Danica Patrick or Ricky Stenhouse Jr. for Rookie of the Year? Also, will Danica dethrone Dale Earnhardt Jr. for Most Popular Driver? So for Ricky and Danica, as far as Rookie of the Year, they both get to go to the banquet. So that's a done deal. We're going to see them both there. But I do believe Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is going to capture the Rookie of the Year award. But I also think it's going to be a very, very close race. But Ricky has so much more stock car experience under his belt than Danica does. I mean, he won 2 Nationwide Series championships. She was only in the series for 1 full year, and finished 10th in the standings. So he definitely has more stock car experience in racing with the Cup guys, because the Cup guys do race nationwide every once in a while. But I do think that his experience is gonna help him finish better than she will. Now, she honestly surprised me at Daytona. I mean, with her, she had a fast car, and this chess match, fast door-to-door racing is something that she excels at, and that was clear in IndyCar, but she stayed in the top 10 the entire time. She fell out once, but that was only to 11th place. So I was really, really impressed with her run, and I think she's going to do really, really well in Phoenix this coming week as well. She ran up in the top 15 towards the end of the November race in Phoenix with crew chief Tony Gibson, who she has now, until she got hit by Jeff Burton and ended up finishing 1 lap down in 17th place. So I think once we see her tackle Phoenix and Vegas and, you know, some of these other tracks that she hasn't been at, or some of these, or even these that she is returning to for a second time, I think that'll be a testament to see how much she has grown in her stock car career and in her ability to handle these cars. So, but I do think Ricky is going to get it. That'd be a really big blow to his ego if Danica got it over him. I mean, he legitimately would be getting beat by a girl. That would be bad. As far as Danica dethroning Dale Earnhardt Jr. for Most Popular Driver, it's possible. I mean, she has such a huge fan base, and that was clearly dominant in Daytona when they announced her for drivers' intros. Since they showed those on TV, and you could clearly hear the cheering for her. It was a lot louder than it was for Dale Earnhardt Jr. Now, that might not have really been the case at the track. You know, there could have just been microphones closer to a lot of Danica fans, but she also has a personal Twitter page and a personal Facebook page. She also has a lot of team members, Danica Racing team members, that send out tweets and Facebook posts and stuff to celebrities and fans and companies to go and vote for her. And that's what they did with Most Popular Driver in the Nationwide Series, which she captured last season. So I don't know if she can dethrone him this season. She can dethrone Junior this season, but I do believe in maybe even a year or two, once she gets into this series and starts, you know, running up with the big boys, I think she is going to dethrone him. So Junior, watch out. Girl's coming through. Ryan asks, what was your favorite moment from Speed Weeks? I loved NASCAR Media Day. I mean, it's the beginning of the season. It officially marks the end of the off-season. And it was on Valentine's Day. How could you not love that? All of the drivers were in a good mood, and everyone at Media Day was in a good mood. Rutledge Wood was interviewing tons of different drivers, and really none of the interviews had anything to do with racing. Not even a little bit. So, I mean, he talked to Jimmy Johnson about his marathon. He talked to Danica about a snowman and Brussels sprouts. I mean, him and Rutledge and Brad Keselowski talked about shoes. I mean, they talk about Twitter with Carl Edwards. I mean, there was nothing that had to do with racing in a lot of those interviews. So I thought that was a really cool touch. Just kind of nice to see the personal side of some of these drivers instead of just the racing side. So I really, really loved NASCAR Media Day. But, I mean, Speed Weeks in general is just awesome. It's the first race weekend of the season, and it's Daytona. You can't get much better than that. Mike asks me, what does NASCAR need to do to improve attendance at tracks and TV viewership? Attendance at tracks has gone down in the last couple of years, especially with the nationwide and the truck races. I do like when tracks allow you to bring in your own coolers and your own snacks, because the drinks and the food at the tracks can get very, very expensive. So I do like when tracks allow you to bring in, an 8x8 cooler or granola bars or something like that. That is something I really believe that all tracks need to do if they don't do it already, because I think that will bring in a lot more people. I don't believe they need to change ticket prices necessarily. A lot of tracks have, $20, $25 tickets. I mean, they're not going to be their best. They're going to be on the ends of the stands, but you're still there to see the live race, and that is so much better than TV. I think what really gets a lot of fans is hotel prices. Hotels jack up their prices so high on race weekends. It is insane. I mean, even if you book them months in advance, they still have that weekend price jacked up 2, 3, 4 times more than their normal rate. So I think that is what discourages a lot of fans from coming, is they have no place to stay, especially if they don't live close to the track. As far as TV viewership, side-by-side coverage is probably the best bet. They did that at the beginning and at the end of the Daytona 500, and that really helped. I mean, it seems like every time they go to commercial, there is a caution somehow. No matter if it's debris or if it's a wreck or something, seems to always be a caution whenever the station goes to commercial break. So I think side-by-side coverage would help a lot with TV viewership. A few more questions left. Kelly asked me, how do you think the new car is going to run at Dega with the drafting? Talked about this a little bit earlier. I think with a new aero package and a few changes to these cars, I think the drafting in general is going to be a lot different than it was in Daytona. I mean, you're still going to have the giant packs and maybe even the long lines. That's never going to change. But I think once these drivers get used to these cars and get a feel for these cars and see how they react in the draft, and now that they've been through a whole race with these cars, they're going to be quite a bit more aggressive when they come to Talladega and back to Daytona. So I think we're going to see quite a bit different racing once we come back to these tracks. Last question is from Brad, and he asks, what is your favorite racing memory? Well, mine doesn't necessarily have to do with racing in general, but it did happen at the track. And if you follow me on Twitter or you have been listening to the show, you can probably guess what it is. And that was when I met Danica Patrick. I met her in Kansas back in October before the nationwide race, and she is such a nice person. And I'm really a big fan of hers, not necessarily for what she does on the track, but for what she does off the track. And I can talk about that another time. But when I got to meet her, she actually introduced herself, which I found kind of funny, and then just carried on a casual conversation. And that was really cool. I mean, yeah, she's, a huge celebrity and a big, big athlete, but she really is, even in stature, really, really, really tiny. So she was really nice to meet. And just being at Kansas in general, everyone was so nice. And I got to meet quite a few other drivers as well, like Mike Wallace and Ricky and Justin Allgaier and Sam Hornish Jr. All the drivers are super, super cool and love to come over and take a picture or sign an autograph or just come over and chat if they have time. So I really love my on-track experience. That was probably my favorite racing memory of all time. And I think that's a pretty good place to end. So, leave your comments below. I don't know if you like this little addition, and hopefully next time I can do maybe a video so you can actually, see my face. Not that you'd really want to, but I think next time we'll try and do a video chat. So I will let you guys know where you can add or where you can send your questions and when. And tune in next week to Fusion 93 KMSC. I'll post the link below in the comments. Have a good night, and we'll see you at Phoenix.